The Houston Texans just made 5 offensive line signings in 10 days, and that is not a minor adjustment. That is a full reset. Nick Caserio looked at this roster, looked at what happened to CJ Stroud last season, and decided the entire front wall needed to come down and get rebuilt from scratch. Braden Smith locked in at right tackle. Wyatt Teller slotted at left guard on a 2-year, $16 million deal. Ed Ingram brought back before free agency even opened. Trent Brown re-signed. Evan Brown added to compete at center. 5 moves, 10 days. And if you think that is where it stops, you are not paying attention, because this offseason is doing something the Texans have not done since Stroud arrived. It is removing every single excuse. But the offensive line is just one layer of this thing. The Texans went out and traded for a running back in David Montgomery, who flat out told reporters he feels like he is in his prime. A guy who looked at DeMeco Ryans from the other sideline and said if he ever got a chance to play for a coach like that, he would jump at it. Now he is here. On top of that, Tank Dell is grinding through rehab and posting workout clips that have the entire fan base buzzing about his return. The defense stayed loaded too. Danielle Hunter got extended. Sheldon Rankins re-signed. Reed Blankenship came over from Philly to start at safety. Logan Hall is back in the city of Houston. Dominic Robinson adds to the edge rotation. This roster did not just get tweaked. It got rewired from the inside out, and the message from the front office could not be louder. We are not waiting. We are going now. And here's what makes all of this so interesting. With all these additions, with all this money being spent up front, there is one name on this roster that suddenly does not have a clear path to the field. A former second-round pick. A guy who is only 22 years old. A player the Texans once believed could anchor the right side of the line for years. But now, with Braden Smith locked in and Trent Brown re-signed as the swing backup, the question nobody in Houston wants to ask out loud is starting to get real loud. And that conversation starts right now. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Texans and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. Go ahead and picture this starting 5. Ariante Ursary holding it down at left tackle. Wyatt Teller right next to him at left guard. Jake Andrews at center, at least for now. Ed Ingram at right guard. And Braden Smith locked in on the right side. That is a completely different wall than what CJ Stroud had in front of him last season. And here's the part that matters most. Braden Smith was asked directly if the Texans talked to him about sliding inside to guard. His answer was clear. No. There was zero discussion about playing anything other than right tackle. That tells you Houston went after him for one specific job, and they got their guy. Teller's the move that ties it all together. His PFF grades dipped slightly last year, but the entire Cleveland Browns offensive line struggled, and he missed some time on top of that. When you look at his full career arc, he has been one of the most reliable guards in the league. His deal maxes out at $23 million with incentives, which means the base is built for value and the upside rewards performance. Plug him in next to Ursary on the left side, and now you have a young tackle with a battle-tested veteran right beside him. That combination alone changes how opposing defenses plan their pressure packages. Then you factor in Evan Brown, who is not just competing for the left guard spot. He started over 900 snaps at center for the Seattle Seahawks back in 2023 and spent the last 2 seasons with the Arizona Cardinals. He could push Jake Andrews at center just as easily. The Texans built flexibility into this group on purpose. But all this depth, all this investment, it puts one player in an impossible position. Coach, and that player is a former second-round pick who might be running out of time in Houston. Blake Fisher came out of Notre Dame as one of the youngest offensive linemen in his draft class. He was raw. He was moldable. And the Texans believed that with time, he could grow into a long-term starter on the right side. But 2 full seasons have passed, and instead of handing him the keys, Houston went out and made their biggest free agent investment at the exact position he was supposed to own. That is not a vote of confidence. That is the front office telling you they were not willing to gamble on potential when the window to win is open right now. Now here is where it gets complicated. Fisher was not terrible when he got chances on the field. He filled in as the 6th offensive lineman in jumbo packages and looked decent in spot starts. He showed enough flashes to prove he belongs on an NFL roster. But decent and enough are not the words you want attached to a former second-round pick heading into year 3. And with Foster Moreau now signed as a tight end who can handle run-blocking duties in heavy sets, even that jumbo package role might not be waiting for him anymore. 2 years left on his rookie deal, and the path to playing time just keeps shrinking. So the real question is simple. Do the Texans hold on to a 22-year-old backup who might never crack this starting lineup? Or do they pick up the phone and see what the market looks like? The Titus Howard trade only brought back a 5th-round pick from Cleveland, and nobody in Houston wants to repeat that kind of return. A 4th-rounder at minimum, maybe a 3rd if a tackle-needy team gets desperate. But sitting on him until he walks in free agency for nothing might be the worst outcome of all. And while this roster figures out its future up front, there's a new face in the backfield who came to Houston with something to prove. Everybody wants to label David Montgomery as the second option. The guy who played behind Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit. The side dish to someone else's main course. And you know what? He has heard every single word of it. Every comment. Every ranking that leaves him off the top 10 lists. Every take that says he is just a complimentary back. That noise followed him all the way to Houston, and instead of running from it, he leaned into it. He told Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle that he works harder in the offseason than most people realize, and that his body is ready to carry a full workload. That is not a guy showing up to collect a paycheck. That is a guy who came here to shut people up. The numbers back up every bit of that confidence. Over the last 4 seasons, Montgomery has averaged no lower than 4.2 yards per carry. In 2023, when he was the lead back in Detroit, he ran for over 1,000 yards at 4.6 per carry. Even splitting time with Gibbs the past 2 years, he still topped 700 yards rushing each season and found the end zone 20 times combined. 8 touchdowns last year, 12 the year before. Those are not backup numbers. Those are numbers that say this man produces no matter what role you put him in. His new deal in Houston is worth $16.5 million over 2 years. Nothing. And that price tag tells you the Texans see him as the guy who carries this run game forward. He even mentioned that Houston was one of his top choices if Detroit moved on from him, partly because of his Iowa State connections already on the roster. But Montgomery is not the only back in this room who needs a fresh start. There's another name in this backfield whose role got completely misused last season, and fixing that problem could unlock a piece of this offense nobody saw coming. Here's something that should frustrate every Texans fan who watched the second half of last season. Woody Marks went from being one of the most involved backs in the passing game to practically invisible. In the first 10 weeks, he saw 24 targets and put up 183 receiving yards. Then from week 11 on, that number dropped to just 12 targets and 25 receiving yards. Read that again. 25 yards through the air over the final stretch of the season. That is not a player who stopped being effective. That is a coaching staff that stopped putting him in a position to do what he does best. His rushing numbers told a similar story. 3.6 yards per carry across the full year. And sure, a terrible offensive line played a role in that. But the truth is, Marks was never built to be a between-the-tackles grinder. He is 5'10". He is quick in space. He catches the ball naturally out of the backfield. The comparison that fits him best is James White, the former Patriots back who made a career out of being the guy you trusted on third down in the 2-minute drill, and in moments where you needed a reliable set of hands underneath. That is what Marks can be when the coaching staff stops forcing him into a role that does not match his skill set. With Montgomery now handling the early down workload, the Texans can finally let Marks operate in his real lane. Third downs, check downs, Space plays where his quickness creates mismatches against linebackers. That split is not just smart roster management. It fixes one of the biggest problems this offense had all year. But a reshaped backfield is only part of the equation. There's a receiver coming back from injury who changes the entire way C.J. Stroud sees the field, and the numbers prove just how much Houston missed him. Look at what happened to C.J. Stroud when the field stretched past 10 yards in 2025. His completion percentage dropped to 50% between 10 and 19 yards downfield. Beyond 20 yards, it fell to 37%. 6 interceptions on intermediate throws, 4 more on deep shots. 12 turnover-worthy plays total on anything 10 or more yards past the line of scrimmage. Now rewind to 2023 when Dell was healthy and on the field. Stroud threw for over 1,300 yards on passes 20 or more yards downfield, with 9 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Not one. 0. That gap between those 2 seasons is not just about growth or regression. It is about a missing weapon that made everything click. Dell spent most of his first 2 seasons lined up outside, logging nearly 600 snaps on the boundary, compared to just 225 in the slot. But the move that could change everything for this offense in 2026 is sliding him inside. With Jaden Higgins continuing to rise as an outside threat and Nico Collins commanding attention on the other side, the middle of the field opens up in a way it simply did not last year. Dell in the slot creates mismatches against linebackers and nickel corners that most defenses are not equipped to handle, especially between 8 and 15 yards downfield, where Stroud was at his worst without him. There's one more layer that makes this return critical. Under pressure, in 2023, Stroud threw for over 1,000 yards with 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. In 2025, those numbers flipped to under 1,000 yards with 8 picks. Dell is the receiver who knows where to be when the pocket collapses. He finds the soft spots. He stays in bounds. He turns broken plays into first downs. But even with his return, this offense still has one more gap to fill, and it might get solved before the first round of the draft is even over. There's a prospect out of Kansas State who walked on as a nobody and turned himself into one of the most technically sound centers in this entire draft class. Sam Heck did not get a scholarship handed to him. He earned every single snap at a Big 12 program by outworking the guys around him. And that mentality is exactly the kind of thing DeMeco Ryans builds his locker room around. He started the last 2 seasons for the Wildcats and put up a stat line that jumps off the page. 0 sacks allowed across both years. He cleaned up from 11 pressures and 5 penalties in 2024 to just 7 pressures and 0 penalties in 2025. That kind of improvement tells you he is coachable and driven to get better every single week. The concern with Sam is size. He has measured in between 291 and 297 pounds, depending on the source. And at the NFL level, true nose tackles and powerful one technique, defenders could try to run right through him. But here's what makes him different. He does not win with power. He wins with positioning. Scouts call him a technician who is always in the right spot before the defender even gets there. He rarely gets fooled by stunts or twists. He pulls from the center position with real intent. And he anchored a Kansas State rushing attack that produced over 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns in 2025 alone, running behind him at 5.2 yards per carry. Scouts have compared him to Tanner Bortolini of the Indianapolis Colts, a similar frame who needed to add weight but won with intelligence. Most projections have Sam landing on day 2 of the draft, somewhere in the 2nd or early 3rd round. The Texans may not need to spend pick 28 on him, but a mid-round selection could give them a long-term answer at center, while Evan Brown battles for the starting job in training camp. And even if every position on this roster gets sorted out perfectly, there's still one final piece that determines whether any of it actually matters. That piece plays quarterback,